at least in the state of Iowa, and I can't say this for every other state, at least in the state of Iowa, majority controls. And I mean that in a way that the minority really is shut out from a lot of abilities and powers. We have a broken supermajority in the state Senate in Iowa where we can sink nominations, which we sank the director of HHS this last week. But that's the scope. At least in the state Senate, there hasn't been a Democratic bill or amendment in the last 8 years that have passed off the floor.
Welcome to An Honorable Profession, a podcast focused on incredibly talented people who've dedicated themselves to public service when their country and communities needed it the most. I'm Ryan Coonerty. Along with Debbie Cox Bolton of the New Deal, I'm lucky enough to be your co-host. The New Deal is an organization that supports the next generation of American leaders. Check out newdealleaders.org to find out more.
2 years ago, Matt Blake won one of the most competitive state legislative races in the history of Iowa, beating a 20-year incumbent to flip a seat that others thought was unwinnable. To do it, he used the lessons he learned from his military service, law background, and his role as his community's 4th of July parade organizer. We talked about the shifting political landscape of Iowa, how and when to make compromises, and how waking up at 5 a.m. is his secret to balancing elected office, Army National Guard service, his law practice, and being a dad to 2 young kids. Enjoy.
Iowa Senator Matt Blake, welcome to An Honorable Profession.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on.
I want to start with a little bit of understanding the political ground in Iowa. It wasn't long ago that it was the state that really made Barack Obama. It was a swing state. It's gone red in recent years. Can you talk about what you're seeing on the ground across your state?
Yeah, that's a fabulous question. I think we could spend the entire hour talking about what has happened with Iowa. I'm not originally from Iowa, came to Iowa in 2012 to go to law school. And one of my first things I had happen when I was here in 2012 is I was on the ground in Des Moines, and Barack Obama had his last political campaign event in 2012 before Election Day in Iowa to celebrate the importance of what Iowa had. And then 2016, of course, we had probably a political realignment, a shift in Iowa's voter electorate, and it shifted over. We have a high percentage of non-college educated individuals in our state. We have a higher percentage than average of whiter individuals in our state. And those were the people that left the Democratic Party in decent high levels over the last kind of decade. Though I do think, if fast forward here to today in 2026, I was kind of on the map again. We are kind of inching forward on some of the political universe, not completely. There are some more competitive states, but our gubernatorial, for example, Rob Sand, all polls, both on the Republican side and the Democrat side, are showing it to be highly, highly competitive, with even the Democratic candidate, Rob Sand, in the lead in almost every single one of those. I actually haven't seen one where he's not in the lead. So I think there is this shift that, okay, we've had this last 10 years. This maybe isn't quite working out again for where we thought it was in this nation and in this state. And there are some policies at the state level that aren't benefiting the common working Iowan. And I think that's kind of where people are beginning to wake up a little bit. And so we are seeing a bit of a shift, not only at the gubernatorial level, at the legislative level, at our congressional districts, our U.S. Senate race. I think Iowa is a lot more competitive than people are giving it credit for.
And can I ask, is it the Democrats have done a better job of reaching out to those voters? Or, I mean, I know that tariffs and these other things have really hit your state hard. Is it just unhappiness with the current administration?
You see, I think it's a combination of all things.
Okay.
We are being particularly hit in this with the tariffs. I can tell you, in all honesty, I think we've lost, in the last year, I think some reports said we lost 19,000 jobs in our state, so we didn't have a net gain. It might have been the last quarter last year. I can't remember the exact statistic. But we are losing jobs and positions, and agriculture in our state, and is much more ingrained than even I realize. I come from, my district's a suburban district of Des Moines. I'm very heavily involved in kind of the industries that kind of surge Des Moines forward. But I didn't realize that when we have downturns, because this is my first time being probably cognizant of an agricultural downturn, I didn't live through the 70s, is that we had, when ag starts downturning, Iowa is actually probably per capita, maybe the fourth industrialized state in the nation. And most of it is based on John Deere. It's based on our plants rendering plants and all these type of things. It's agricultural industry. And so when farmers aren't buying tractors, it impacts all of us, which is impacting the entire state. So I think people are waking up to that a little bit. When it comes to messaging with Democrats in particular, I think I don't know if the party itself has been the right messenger. I think it's the candidates that are becoming the messengers. And, I'll go back to Rob Sand. He has spent nearly a decade being in office showing that Democrats aren't scary folks. Yeah. He's a bow hunter. He's somebody that goes and eats pizza, and he records himself doing it, and people eat that up. No pun intended. And then there's candidates like myself. I'm a veteran. I'm a member of the Iowa Army National Guard. This haircut isn't by choice; it is by federal mandate. Because I had drill last weekend, and so I think the successful candidates are those that show that they're not part of the pack. They are their own individual selves. And that's beginning to break through quite a bit in our state, because I think people are tired of some of the policies, and we can get into what those policies are, tired of the policies at the state and national level. But I really think it's, people are really coming out and showing that they're authentic, and people are beginning to realize that the party, the Democrats, or at least the people running, aren't too bad.
Not too bad is a good place to start in any election.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned your military background. Also, your district was one of the most competitive districts in the state.
Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about your path to public service? How did you find yourself thinking about the impacts of tariffs on your agricultural state industry and messaging and all those things that you get to spend your day doing?
Yeah. So my path to public service is varied and long and all these things. It's so I started I originally from South Dakota, and I was involved with local politics when I was there. I interned in DC for Senator Tim Johnson, if anybody remembers him. So back in the day, that's kind of where I started out. And when I came to law school in 2012 in Iowa, and from there, obviously had to get through that ordeal, which is law school. And then when I got out, I actually still did advocacy work up the Capitol. I advocated for nonprofit aging service providers. I hate saying this word, but I was a registered lobbyist for a little while. But that's kind of how, so I've been in the Iowa Capitol for numbers of years. So that gave me some advantage with that. But when it comes to public service in particular, I've always been a big believer. Well, taking a step back, when it came to military, I was planning on joining at 18, and it was the height of Iraq. And one of 3 times in my life my father has ever cried in front of me was him saying, "I don't want you coming back in a body bag." And I was like, okay, all right, fine. I won't join at that time. Then I get into college, and I was contemplating ROTC. And for reasons like getting up really early and doing things like that, I was like, okay, I took the college experience and didn't do it. But it was always in the back of my mind. And my wife and I worked out a kind of a compromise that I could enter in after I got done with law school. And that's where I joined the Iowa Army National Guard as a JAG officer. So that's what I am. I'm a JAG. And I've been one for 9 to 10 years. So I'm kind of in that zone. And I started as a lieutenant. I'm currently Major Blake, and I still drill on the same drill schedule that I do. And I deployed to the Middle East in 2021, where I served in Iraq and Kuwait, and in the capacity as a JAG. And I was there about 9 months in country. But that's just a component of my service. And then in 2019, because I was doing a lot within the community, like the first thing that I did when I actually moved into the city I represent, which is Urbandale, I'm a big believer that once you have the capacity to serve, if you have the ability and the time, because I know a lot of people that when they start having little kids, myself included, time becomes very valuable. So at the time I didn't have kids. And so I raised my hand to try to do something of service to my community. And my town that I represent, Urbandale, is about a 45,000 person town, has a big yearly 4th of July celebration. And we have one big parade, which is the 4th of July parade. And so I raised my hand and I helped run the 4th of July parade. That was my first thing I did as public service. And I don't know whether I was naive or really enthusiastic, maybe a combination of both. But they were like, you seem energetic, so you go be in charge of the whole celebration. So we had, on top of the parade, I had the carnival and I had the entertainment and I had the whole thing. And that's kind of how I kind of cut my teeth in service in my community. And I actually, up until the last 2 years, still ran the parade, but something had to give in my life. And then local people understood that I kind of was this active individual. And they asked me to run for city council in 2019. And out of a 7-way race, because all the incumbents decided to retire, for 3 spots out of a 7-way race, I was the top vote getter, which I appreciate. And then in 2023, 2024, I decided not to run for city council because I thought there was an opportunity to run for state senate. And then I think you hinted at it. I currently have the record as the most expensive legislative race in state history in the state of Iowa. Defining, and I was the only Democrat to flip a seat in the state of Iowa in 2024. Only incumbents lost. I was the only Democrat to beat a Republican in 24. So in the state of Iowa, I mean, that was a flip. I shouldn't say that I was the only one, but like the only one that flipped something, which was, and I won by 5 points. I beat an incumbent that had been there for 20 years. He was the longest serving Senate Republican in the state. And I beat him. And I think it was just, I have this good resume. I seem to be easygoing. I think I have a decent policy background. But I think folks were just open to somebody that's authentic and, is probably aligns a little bit more with their beliefs in my district, and somebody that's willing to fight.
It's an amazing story. That is a journey, and most expensive means probably least fun race you could possibly run. That's code for least fun.
Yes.
I guess. How does that military experience and training that you're still doing, getting the haircut, inform your policy making and the way you approach politics? So
I didn't realize how much of an impact my military life had on me until I've been in it for a long time, and especially since I've deployed, is that I began to realize that it seeps into a lot of like my leadership and my decisions on leadership. And the reason I ended up kind of leaving one job and moving to private practice law is after I deployed, I spent a year doing a mission-oriented lifestyle where we were all fighting on the same side for a common cause. And when I got back, I realized I was not in a job that did that. And that is something that I have sought ever since, was to live a life that was kind of mission-oriented, that we were all fighting on the same side for a common cause. Don't get me wrong. I'm a member of one of 17 in a caucus. We fight like cats and dogs. We have disagreements, but we're ultimately trying to push for this common good moving forward, which I think is an important distinction. And so that military bearing that I have with that, with how I look at things, how I look at from a team orientation, that to me is something that's very important to me. Like I struggle sometimes, like when members of my caucus, we all sit down and we say, hey, we're going to do this one way. We're all going to vote this way. And then you have one person that's, even though we asked them very specifically, like, no, please be part of the team. And then they go do their own thing, which is their right as a member of our caucus and the right as a senator. That bugs me a lot, because to me, a team is somebody that's, if you want to achieve mission success, You need to fight as a fighting force together. And so it does help me from that perspective, from a leadership perspective. And it also allows me to have a broader perspective of just events generally, because I look at things like, but I look at it from a perspective that's different from many folks because of the chance that I could potentially be there, or I could potentially be in a different complex or a different zone. And just my background and the conversations I have related to that does bleed in differently from a perspective of, I have people might be angry at a certain thing, and I'm like, well, I might have to be there. So I have to take a different perspective, a more nuanced approach to it.
Let me ask, there are veterans out there who may want to engage at the community level or even at the national level. They would have strong opinions about some of these potential engagements that they and their friends would have to deploy to. What's your advice for folks who are either active duty, reserve, or veterans about entering public life?
And you have to do that very carefully. As a JAG in particular, as the guy that's supposed to know the laws and the rules, like, I do my absolute best to walk that line specifically. I think when it comes to local and state level, the way that I handle it is I just leave the national politics alone. I stay in my lane. I stay in my state lane. That's what I think a lot of state legislators and city folks do. You have the most impact at your state level. Focus on how to make that impact as impactful as possible. Don't try to do all the things, because then I think you struggle at doing what you're supposed to be doing, your mission, the best. But when it comes to those things, if you're a veteran, if you have moved on and not subject to the scope and of having the president and the director of war, or whatever his title is, that to me is, you can speak on those. Use your experiences. It's a powerful statement. Things that you should convey to folks. If you're still in the military, if you're in the Reserve or National Guard, you have the complete and utter right to serve. That is something I do. And you can do it. It's completely right. In some ways, they actually like it because you have that additional voice in it. But that's where I would recommend is, like, be extremely careful. The way the actual regulations state that you can't use language pejorative language, or language that would be something for an elected official. So you do have this little bit of a guardrail on you that you need to kind of curb your speech a little bit. But I wouldn't, when it comes to engaging with your community and being a veteran, it is people look up to veterans. They look to a lot of folks like myself we have served, we've proven we can serve. And I think there should be more veterans that run, but you just have to be a little careful on the regulations on both sides, especially if you're still a member of the military, on exactly what kind of speech that you can provide.
That makes sense. So you talked about the mission and the team and what you're trying to do in the Capitol. Can you talk about substantively what you're working on and how you're trying to benefit both your constituents and your state?
Oh, that's always a fun question that I never can answer. Like, I have struggled answering a little bit from time to time, because at least in the state of Iowa, and I can't say this for every other state, at least in the state of Iowa, majority controls. And I mean that in a way that the minority really is shut out from a lot of abilities and powers. We have a broken supermajority in the state Senate in Iowa, where we can sink nominations, which we sank the director of HHS this last week. But that's the scope. At least in the state Senate, there hasn't been a Democratic bill or amendment in the last 8 years that have passed off the floor. So it makes it difficult to say, here, these are the bills I passed. This is the policy that I'm pushing. So I always have to take that from a step back, which is an issue with any state that's a little bit more red. Is that you have to find wins in the margins sometimes. You have to fight those policy issues where you can. And you see, I've been really robust at on affordability issues. I tried, in particular, I've been trying to narrow in and increase the scope on housing issues, trying to bring down the cost of first-time home buyers, try to build just in not only just for policy focused on helping them with down payments, but then other bills that are focused on trying to bring the cost of a first-time home build down, because like here in the Des Moines Metro, the first time to build a brand new home, it's about $400,000. You in California, probably a little bit more. Yes. But for a first-time home buyer, somebody that's somebody that's the age of 30, 35, that a down payment for a $400,000 home is still kind of unattainable. I think there's national statistics, I think it's from the National Association of Realtors, that says that the average first-time home buyer is the age of 40 to 42. And when you look back a few decades, it was much lower than that. If you go back to like 1990, it was the high 20s. So this is going backwards or making it more unattainable for my generation and the generation below me to try to obtain home ownership. If you look at energy prices, I mean, you can go down the line. So I get invested in energy. Luckily, Iowa is actually pretty good, at least part of our state. We have one of our two investment-owned energy producers has 100% generation capacity for wind. So we're actually ahead of the curve when it comes to some of these green initiatives and renewable energies. But that doesn't mean that we're perfect. And so, for example, I was on a committee where I was a strong supporter of we're restarting up a nuclear power plant here in Iowa, and we're trying to build on tax incentives for that. So I am seen as kind of this bipartisan person in my caucus from the Republican majority. I have voted against my party and my caucus several times this year and last year, because I try to look at things from a perspective of what's going to be best for Iowans. And so I've used that as a way for my bona fides, to have them work across the aisle. And I've been seen as somebody that they can do that with. And so I can shift policy a little bit, but nothing that I get to put my name on. I just have to work from behind the scenes. And also, I guess, so that's the affordability side. And then the other side, I'm one of the only practicing attorneys in the Iowa State Senate, which is astounding when everybody thinks that we're all just attorneys. So I'm ranking member on judiciary. And so I deal with a lot of the criminal justice realm, and I deal with trying to work those issues as well. Usually to moderate success, but that's the other kind of, like, if you look at the two buckets of policy that I focus on, it's by necessity I have to do one because I'm my background, and one that I'm just trying to make sure that Iowans can afford to live here and be here. So those are kind of the two buckets I work from.
When I look at your record, you're very clear being in the minority, where you're like, I'm going to vote to move this forward. I have these concerns about this, but on net, it's better for the state than not. Can you talk about that approach to bipartisanship? How do you decide when it's okay to compromise? What are you looking for when you're making that decision?
And that's a good question. You see, I think I hew to a few core beliefs that individual liberties should be protected. So we shouldn't be taking away liberties of LGBTQ individuals, which is bills that we've had in the past, making sure that women have the full reproductive freedom. So I have some core issues that I don't move on. But we'll just use an example of a bill that I voted. I was one of two Democrat votes that we had just this last week, or 2 weeks ago, somewhere in there. There was this bill to reform. Well, here in Iowa, we apparently sit like 2 miles down on a sea of hydrogen. I didn't know this. This is something I learned this year.
Sounds dangerous.
Exactly. But you have to dig like 2 miles down to find it. So Iowa does not have a robust oil and gas law. It's because we don't have any. That's not something we do. We're not a commodity state like that. But there are some groups that are wanting to look at this. So we had a bill to revamp our 100-year-old oil and gas law to try to facilitate this hydrogen development. And we had some of our groups, some people that have supported Democrats, coming out saying XYZ reasons why they wanted to not have Democrats vote for this vote, and we should kill the bill. But maybe it's the lawyer in me, but I just looked at it objectively and I was like, guys, this provides more protections for landowners. It facilitates development in a way that allows this to happen and you don't have to use this antiquated systems and litigate over this. I don't know why we're voting no. And I stood up on the floor and I said that. I was like, after members of my party stood up against the bill, I stood up and said we should vote for it. There are legitimate reasons why members of my party voted against it, where revenues from this go into a certain fund versus the general fund, which I think is completely fine. But I didn't want the what's the old saying? The perfection be the enemy of the good. And yep. To me, it was a good bill for trying to facilitate development in our state. So that's just one example of multiple that I have where I kind of look at, and I guess it's maybe because I'm a little bit more pro-development than maybe some of my colleagues. I don't know. But that's where if it's something that facilitates new economic growth, does it in a way that protects the citizens of Iowa, I'm going to probably vote yes.
Your day job is practicing law, helping seniors, other folks with trusts and wills and estates, all the fun stuff. I don't remember much of from law school, but I remember it's a thing. I'm wondering how do you take that experience and to help seniors in your state when they learn from day to day, meeting with them, hearing about their concerns, working with families.
Yep, and that's the primary part of my practice, and the growing part of my practice is I do some real estate work, but it's elder law and focus on that. Again, with my background kind of in the nursing home industry, like it was a natural crossover for it. And in my caucus, I'm one of the experts on Medicaid just because of that fact. I have multiple clients. In fact, I have a hearing in next week, I think, or maybe the week after, where I'm helping people with disabilities who are having their resources cut in half because of Medicaid budget shortfalls. I'm talking about some of the most disabled individuals in the state of Iowa. If you ask people what's Medicaid should be used for, it's these individuals. And we're having some of our managed care organizations cutting their services in half, and which may be forcing individuals into institutional care, which is frankly more expensive than keeping people at home. And so I use that background. So I just do that's part of my practice. So I get to continue that practice. But then I bring that information to bear when it comes to the legislature. I have railed against our structure in Medicaid multiple times. I hope if we get a new governor that he's open to fine tuning how we do managed care in the state. And that's something that I'm already pretty certain on, that I will be approached and asked, what do you think we should do, because of my background in this topic? So I think it directly impacts my ability to impact the discussions when it comes to Medicaid policy, when it comes to some of those things. And then, on the judiciary side, you still need to write laws about how wills are done. Yeah. So I get all those bills, and which are very nerdy and very boring, but that's part of legislating too. You get to do these cool things about like energy development, and then you also have to figure out there was one bill, which is still my favorite, whether you could have a solid blue light on a boat in the evening on state waterways, which was just a wonderful use of my time.
Wow. I bet people will be surprised to learn that there are probably passionate advocates on both sides who have real opinions about that.
Yes, and for all those solid blue people that that are now very angry at me because saying that on this, I'm sorry in advance, but I'm sorry. I got to take my pot shots once in a while, and that's one.
Yep. Fair enough. Just on a practical level, I mean, you have a law practice. You're in the reserve, you have a family, you are in the state Senate. Like, how do you navigate and keep all these balls in the air?
I do okay. Actually, it's funny that you bring that up. Yesterday, There was an event at my son's school. It was a music program. He's in kindergarten. And I told him we weren't in session. So I was like, oh, I'll be there. And my son was like, you're actually going to be there? He was surprised that I was going to be there. So that, stab in the heart from a 6-year-old. But nonetheless, like, it is difficult. Like, you do have to figure out how to balance and prioritize. My first one, still and foremost, will always be my family. I have a 6-year-old, and my wife's still married for me at this point, at least, after all those things. But that is still my guiding light. That's one of the reasons I ran and had the ability to run is because I'm a local legislator. So each night I go out, I go back home. And like, I have a deal with my wife because, and I think this is probably the same in all state legislatures, you could go out every single night with different events and parties and different groups and all this. I keep it to one a week. And that's my agreement with my wife. And so I usually go to like the longest list of events during the week, and that's how I hit it up. But that's how I handle it during session. When it comes to maintaining my practice, I get up, and this is maybe the military in me, I get up every day at 5 a.m. And I do from 5 a.m. to like 7 a.m. when my kids are fully awake. I do billables every single day for 2 hours. And then we tend to, at least in Iowa, have Friday off and Monday morning off. And all I do is I work and try to maintain my practice then. And then I still have that Army thing where it's 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. So I still have to squeeze that in on time. So I have 1 weekend away. I do try to be fairly protected my weekends, that I don't tend to do my billables during that time. So I don't make as much money. And it just comes down to is whether I'm willing to sacrifice finances on one side to try to maintain this. And it's a juggling act. Sometimes I drop balls. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes your son will wonder whether you'll show up at a music program or not.
Yeah.
It's part of the deal.
I gotta say, I think that's we've done a lot of episodes. It's one of the most honest answers about the real life trade-offs that you make. For all the things in our adult lives, but especially if you're trying to be a good servant and a good family member and provide for your family, it's really hard.
Yes. And I'm somewhat blessed that my wife, she's an optometrist. She makes good money. We don't rely entirely on my finances, but it's difficult to balance and keep all the balls in the air.
Well, we love the fact that you are keeping the balls in the air, and you're a member of New Deal, and you have given me a little hope for the future of Iowa, which then impacts the rest of us over time. And so I just want to thank you for joining us today and for everything you're doing for your community and our country.
Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate being a part of New Deal. It has been I've only been in for, less than a year, but it's been a fabulous network of individuals. I'm really excited to meet all the people, very like-minded individuals that I get to meet. And so I really appreciate you guys taking the time to interview me and talk to me. And I'm happy that to try to continue moving forward with the New Deal mission.
I love it. It's a team effort, as you said. Thank you.
Thank you.
An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. And because we keep things honorable, no tax dollars were used in the making of this podcast.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group.